you're muted.
Thank you. Can you all hear me okay on Zoom? Excellent. Hello there, everybody. Lovely to see you. What a relief to be here after the storm of the last few days, eh? Isn't it lovely? Guess what? That's what I'm going to talk about. Hurricane Helene, right? For those of you who have followed the news, you will know it happened. I couldn't avoid it. Even I couldn't. I don't follow the news much, and even I couldn't not see that we had this hurricane. And there's a couple of things I want to pull out of this, a couple of lessons. The first one is just to acknowledge that Beth and I were just very lucky, very lucky. And I'm sure this is a story that resonates in different ways with a lot of people. We had an issue at home. We had some problematic gutters that had to do with our rain harvesting system and other things. And just fortunately, after about 6 months, we finally managed to get it fixed. About 10 days ago, 2 weeks ago. It would have been a disaster in the basement if we hadn't. So afterwards, we went wandering around. We were just in our neighborhood. It was really, really lucky. No major damage at all. No trees came down. We had a neighbor at the back who has had a really hard time recently. She's had her daughter die. Her son, her daughter died. Her son is having some really hard times. So she is going through a very difficult time right now. And her basement just completely flooded. So she was kind of distraught. And we learned about this, or Beth learned about this relatively early in the morning. And she just scurried over there to help. And I was called in shortly thereafter to do the heavy lifting and move life equipment around. And it was really lovely. And it talks to what happens when we have crises. Nobody cares whether the neighbor's black or white or brown or yellow or whether they're Christian or Muslim, Buddhist or a Muslim or a Jew, or it just doesn't matter who they vote for. It just doesn't matter. You just come together and you help. You just do it. I was talking yesterday with a couple of folks about the difference between compassion and empathy. And this is really a really good example. If we look at the hurricane on the TV and we see the catastrophic damage that's happening around the Southeast, and if we link it to global warming and think, oh my goodness, this is all falling apart, that becomes just overwhelming. That's tuning into suffering and embodying that suffering and just experiencing that suffering as suffering, and really is horrible. But when it becomes this intimate personal thing, we just move into the suffering of other people and we help them. It's compassion. So that's what we just naturally do. And more broadly in our neighborhood, there are a lot of flooded basements, a lot of text messages back and forth, a lot of sharing of sump pumps and fans and heaters and all sorts of other, shop vacs and whatever. Just lots of coming together in compassion. So this is one of and it happened here in Atlanta with Snowpocalypse. You remember that one? We can all laugh about it now because it seems silly, because it was, how could we not cope with that? But it was horrible at the time, and there was so much suffering and so much just natural, spontaneous help. So that's an important lesson. There's another part of the lesson, though, that is equally important, which is when we move into help without wisdom, a lot of the time that help is misguided. Now, in this particular case, helping somebody drain their basement, that's what you do. But a lot of the time when people are suffering, we move into that suffering to help, and it's misguided. There've been some catastrophic civic renewal projects where large areas of towns have been bulldozed down to remove townships or whatever you want to call them, put up big apartment blocks. Catastrophic. Nice apartment blocks, better housing, nice roofs, nice water supply and power supply. Totally destroyed communities. Horribly ill thought out. So it's compassion without any wisdom. which isn't really compassion at all. It's, doing what I think's best. So the other part of our practice is cultivating that wisdom. And when we look at Hurricane Helene, my goodness, the power of that thing. You go back a few days and there was going to be this storm off the coast, and then next thing you know, it's just gathering in the Gulf, and it's gathering and it's gathering, and over a few hours, it becomes a
Category.
Thank you. Category 4 hurricane. Wow. And if you think of the total volume of water, 10 inches of water, 20 inches of water across pretty much this whole of the Southeast, what volume of water is that? It's incredible. Just incredible. We have no idea. We can't touch that kind of power. It's places us firmly in an environment where we are completely without any control whatsoever. And we realize the fundamental impermanence of everything. So if we step back from it, we can really use this as a way to tune into impermanence and recognize that all those things we hold on to, those nice things we had stored in our basement, and those cardboard boxes that got flooded and now destroyed, all of that stuff can be gone in a heartbeat. Everything that is conditioned is impermanent. And to try to hold on to it, to try and make a thing of it, and that includes this, right? To try and make a thing of it is to guarantee dukkha, to guarantee suffering. There is nothing that we can hold on to. Our practice is all about letting go. And in letting go, seeing there is nothing that I can call me, nothing that I can, of which I could say, this is me, this is myself, this is mine, this is what I am. And there's something beautiful that happens in it, because it is out of that intuitive experience that we move into helping the other. Last night, on a more mundane level, a dear friend was ordained a minister in the Church of Christ. So he was at the old First Congregational Church, which was right in the heart of downtown Atlanta. So I went along to support him, and it was a beautiful ceremony. And I bring it up because at the end I'd received communion from him. It was his first communion, and it was really a lovely experience. Communion, I don't know how many of you ever receive communion these days, but I do it very rarely. But when I do, it's the most beautiful, peaceful experience, and I find it really opens the same kind of deep peace that meditation opens up. If you really settle into it, it's a beautiful practice. Anyway, so I received communion from him, and then he offered a benediction. And his benediction, he's going to be a fine preacher because he just stands up and he's just a natural orator. And he said that as his introduction to the benediction, he said, and I want to start by saying a few words that lead into it. And he said, I want to thank God for friction. Let me go through a list of several of these. For friction. And it's the friction that we have in personal experiences, right? It happens all the time. We don't need a hurricane to feel this. It's there every day, just in those little chance encounters. With loved ones, with neighbors, with friends, with just somebody in the grocery store, with somebody on the interstate. Friction. Thank you for friction. Friction calls us to attention. Friction gives us an opportunity to see that we're holding on to something. We're making a me out of this. Because friction exists at the boundary between things. For there to be friction, we have made two things, a this thing and a that thing. And the friction is where they meet. So friction is an opportunity to see we've made these things, we've made a me. And we've made a me out of things that are impermanent. And it is only that act of making a me, of holding on to impermanent things, that is causing the dukkha, that is causing the experience of friction, which is an unpleasant experience. Thank you for obstacles. People obstacles, thing obstacles, obstacles to promotions or admission to university or closing on the house we thought we were going to buy in a couple of months. Thank you for obstacles. Obstacles do the same thing. Obstacles show us that obstacles are things we've created because they're separating this thing that we've created here, which we call a me, with the thing over there that we want to get to. Obstacle is something of our creation. Thank you, obstacles, for letting us see this act of separation we've created. And therefore, by separating impermanent things, causing dukkha. Thank you. The way he framed it was thank you for friends, for brothers and sisters, and for parents. Can be friends, can be sangha. These are people, community that show us the path, show us the way into love, show us the way into connection, show us the way into letting down boundaries. Thank you, children. That's you, Charlie. Thank you, children. Children have a wonderful way. They get stuck on things, but it lasts that long, right? All these terrible things that are obstacles, that are friction, that are the end of the world, gone, on to happiness. Children are a gateway to seeing a way through impermanence. Thank you for silence and for breathlessness. I don't think he meant breathlessness in the way that I'm going to use it, but in breathlessness. But thank you for silence and for breathlessness. The silence is always there. The hurricane has an eye in the middle of it, and the eye is notoriously still, and so you get these storms, and then you get silence, and then you get storm again. But the silence, it really is there. The noise is something we allow to happen. The silence is always there. The Thich Quang Duc, who was the first of the Vietnamese monks who self-immolated and as a way of protesting the Vietnam War, the American War. Protesting is probably not quite right, but making a very visible statement to try and draw the attention of the world on what was not being done and on misdirections all over the place. That was a human being who felt that was the only way he could be seen and heard. And when he sat in silence. He sat in stillness, while the thing we think of as him was literally in flames. But he was in stillness. Think about it. Our lives are the same. All the chaos around us, stillness is there in the middle of it. And if we find the stillness, our relationship to the chaos changes. The relationship to the noise can change. Thank you for stillness, because stillness is the place from which we can see impermanence. We can see the arising of suffering. Breathlessness. Breath is a fabrication. We follow our breath when we meditate. We actually don't follow our breath. We follow our idea of the breath. We follow what we think the breath is. It's not actually the breath at all. If you follow your breath, you really look at what's going on. It's an idea you're following. It's a physicality. When you really settle down, the breath gets really soft, really subtle, really spaced out. And you go through periods of time where the breath just stops. There's a real stillness that comes. Just that it's very, very deep stillness. Thank you for silence and breathlessness. And I'm going to finish today by going to the Lotus Sutra. It's not something I talk about a great deal, but it's a magnificent sutra. It's called, in many places, it's called the King of Sutras. Equally, it should be the Queen of Sutras. And it's mysterious and bizarre and full of kaleidoscopic projections and Buddha fields and myriads of billions and gazillions of Buddhas and enlightened beings throughout time and space and floating in the sky, stupas the size of Atlanta. But the message is a very simple message when you cut through it. The message is one of you too will be a Buddha. Everybody. You too will be a Buddha. Everybody will be a Buddha. That means everybody will come into the world as an enlightened being and an enlightening being to help, to move into compassion. And there's two things happening there. The first is, this is not a choice. Well, there are two things, but it's not a choice between the two things. Not a choice between wisdom and compassion. The message is, first, wake up. See your true nature. See that there is no thing here called a me. There really isn't. Spend our time looking at the impermanence around us, looking at how we create these separations, what that young minister was saying last night. Thank you for all of these things, because they allow us to see them. And then secondly, from that place, don't say, phew, I'm done. Shuffle off this mortal coil, I'm free. You can't do, because there's still balls of energy out here that think they're people, that think they're trees and cats and dogs, and they suffer when they think. So there's a need to come back, and this is what being the Buddha is about, showing back up and helping, but helping from that place of wisdom. So it's the and. It's sit on the cushion, see more clearly, and from that place be in a position to truly help, truly meet beings where their suffering is, in their suffering, and then out of boundless compassion actually help in that suffering. And it's very spontaneous, it's a very intuitive action, not planned. It's very intuitive, it's very natural. And the other message out of the Lotus Sutra, so joyful. Every time somebody says, you too are a Buddha, the person responds with boundless joy, and they dance, and they are so grateful because they have received something that they had never received before. So joyful. Which is to say, it's not, yeah, it's to say life is a joyful thing. And this idea of impermanence, I should say this is not to wish hurricanes out there and, to look at the suffering caused out there and use that, say, thank you for that, that's a tool for me. We're being grateful for what happens here, and we're looking at how the hurricane lands here, and this is where the work goes on. And we see the suffering out there, but there is great joy in this, because life, the universe, and everything is extraordinary. It's just astonishing. And to be in this, in the middle of it, with the opportunity to be alive and to help. Oh my goodness. Thank you for all of this. I have received something I have never received before.